Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, sometimes these big political scandals, they just seem designed to make your head spin, don't they?
You really do.
Today, though, we're trying to cut through some of that noise. We are diving into a really high-stakes investigation. It's about an alleged organized criminal network
Hmm.
operating, our sources say, right inside the Antigua government. And it led to, well, public confrontations, big resignations, and hundreds of state assets just vanishing.
That's right. And our focus today is really on the intricate details of this Antigua vehicle scandal. Because the source documents we have, they don't just say the corruption happened, but they lay out how it was all systematized.
So how they made it work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're looking at how this group, and they apparently call themselves the Chain Gang, which is telling,
Yeah, quite a name.
how they managed to get their hands on nearly $15 million worth of vehicles and distribute them, all while, completely bypassing the country's top financial officials.
And the sources make it clear this wasn't just simple embezzlement, was it? This sounds like a sophisticated setup.
Oh, absolutely. A whole organizational structure designed specifically to hide the illegal purchase of, get this, potentially up to 400 government vehicles. We're talking about a system built on clever paperwork and, frankly, internal collusion.
And if you need just one number to grasp the scale here,
Go on.
the sources point to $15 million spent on around 200 illegally bought vehicles. And then these vehicles were apparently handed out like sweets at Halloween. That's the quote from the material.
Like sweets at Halloween.
Yeah.
So we really need to understand the mechanism, the how, that let such a huge physical asset loss stay hidden for so long.
Okay, so let's jump into the drama first. The moment it all kind of exploded into public view.
Right, the cabinet meeting.
Exactly. Where the Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, the PM, directly confronted Mrs. Maria Brown. She was allegedly right in the middle of this bulbul, which is the local term for this kind of scandal, specifically involving these vehicles.
Okay, before we get to the confrontation itself, maybe we should quickly clarify the key players, particularly in the Ministry of Public Works, or PWD.
Good idea. So you've got the Minister PWD, the Junior Minister PWD, and then the Permanent Secretary, the PSPWD.
And the PS, the Permanent Secretary, is really crucial here, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the top administrator, the one responsible for all the documents, the procedures.
The nuts and bolts guy.
Basically, yes. And when things got heated, this figure, Clement, another key person, he gets summoned to the cabinet.
Right. And what does he say?
He claims he was just, following the system that was already there. Specifically says he got instructions for ordering and distributing vehicles from Maria Brown.
Referred to as Maria Baba, sometimes in the sources.
Maria Baba, yeah.
Huh?
Often working alongside the PS. So Clement was essentially pointing the finger upwards, saying, I just did what I was told.
And this leads to the really tense moment.
Extremely tense. The documents describe Clement being on the verge of getting fired. And that's when Maria Brown apparently jumped up, begging, right there in the cabinet meeting.
Begging. And this is where the PM reportedly lost it.
Completely exploded.
Yeah.
Delivered this rebuke that, it sounds absolutely unprecedented in how public and emotional it was.
Yeah, and we should probably note here the source material uses some very strong, very vulgar language to capture just how raw that moment was.
It does.
The PM allegedly shouted at her, "Honorable member, I have the fucking evidence. Shut your..." Well, the source uses a harsher word from Al. "Up, shut to fuck up. I have the evidence. You and you, junior minister, need firing."
Wow. That kind of public breakdown, it just signals this wasn't just about missing vehicles anymore, right? It was about loyalty, trust, completely fractured at the highest political level.
And the consequences were immediate.
Instantly. The Customs Controller, Raju Bodu, a very senior official in a really critical department, he resigned, effective immediately.
Which tells you something about how wide this network of, well, complicity or maybe pressure must have reached. Way beyond just the Public Works Department.
Definitely.
So let's just quickly nail down that chain of command for the actual purchases. Who ordered what?
Okay, so the junior minister, PWD, stated that the minister, PWD, directed him to buy 200 vehicles.
At inflated prices, right?
At jacked up prices, yes, from specific vendors named Harney and Baba. And supposedly, these were for the police force.
But crucially,
this was all done without any permission or even knowledge of the main cabinet, or importantly, the finance minister.
and that right there, That's the core of how they bypass the system.
It's the blueprint for circumvention, exactly. You've got the minister directing the illegal purchase, Maria Brown, apparently authorizing the distribution later, and the permanent secretary, the PSPWD, enabling the paperwork, the fabrication, the movement of documents.
So they essentially created a black market purchasing system running parallel inside the official government budget structure.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the core now, the how. How on earth do you spend $15 million, acquire 200 actual physical vehicles, and the people managing the country's money? They just don't notice.
Right. And this is where that name, the chain gang, becomes really specific and frankly quite chilling.
Because?
Because they weren't just opportunistic thieves. They were organized. They specialized in manipulating administrative logistics. Their explicit goal, according to the source, was, and I quote, "Ton finance minister into fool circumvent finance officials at head office."
Wow, so their target wasn't just the money, it was accountability itself.
Precisely. And they did it by basically weaponizing bureaucracy, finding the choke points in the system and making them fail. Let's start with the documents.
Okay, the paperwork trail, or lack thereof.
Exactly. The PSPWD, the permanent secretary, was reportedly instructed to prepare all the documents related to these purchases without using any of the regular PWD staff members.
So keeping it totally contained, no risk of internal leaks or whistleblowers within the department itself.
Correct. And then these documents, prepared in secret, were sent straight to a certain person at the Treasury. Someone whose only job, it seems, was to make sure these specific payments went through.
So that bypasses all the normal review stages. The financial analysts, the auditors who'd usually scrutinize things.
Completely bypassed. So, step 1, neutralize internal checks at PWD. Step 2, install a complicit insider at the Treasury payment point.
Okay, but still, $15 million. That's a huge amount. How did they get authorization for that much spending without setting off massive alarms? A single big request would surely get flagged.
That's where the cabinet creeper decision comes in.
Yeah.
This sounds like a critical bureaucratic loophole they exploited brilliantly from a criminal perspective.
A creeper decision. Explain that for us.
So instead of one massive, highly visible request for funds for 200 vehicles, which, yes, the finance minister would almost certainly question they used the cabinet secretary.
Okay.
And the cabinet secretary apparently issued authorization for these purchases, batch by batch, little bits at a time.
I see. So why is that so effective for hiding it?
Well, it defeats the way systems usually track large-scale fraud. You look for big, unusual transactions, right? Things that stand out. By breaking the $15 million down into multiple, smaller, staggered transactions, these creeper decisions, the money just sort of seeps through the system. It never crosses that high-dollar threshold that triggers serious, high-level ministerial review.
So it makes a massive expenditure look like, I don't know, routine departmental restocking or something minor.
Exactly. Ingenious.
Yeah.
In a disturbing way.
Okay, so the money's out. The vehicles start arriving. Now they have 200 physical assets. How do you hide those from the government's own inventory system? How do you make 200 cars just disappear on paper?
Right, the physical concealment. For that, they apparently brought in the head of the transport board.
Another key plague.
And gave him very specific instructions. The vehicles were to be given private number plates, not government ones,
Okay.
and current licenses. This authorized them to get government fuel, which is a massive operational cost and perk. But, crucially, they were not to be entered into the main government inventory system.
So they existed physically, they used taxpayer resources like fuel, but digitally, on the official record, they were ghosts.
Absolute digital invisibility. That's next-level concealment.
And even within the police force, the supposed end user for these vehicles, they kept up this strict need-to-know basis, didn't they?
They did. The instruction was apparently very specific. Only deal with Cuffy at police force, not the commissioner.
Cuffy. A specific person.
Seems like it. A code name or a real name, unclear. But the point is, the chain gang knew they didn't need the whole police command structure on board. They just needed operational access for the vehicles on the ground, and one single complicit contact inside Cuffy to manage their movement and use without alerting the top boss, the commissioner.
Wow. So when you just step back and look at that whole process, it's staggering. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment crime.
Not at all.
It was an elaborate, organized criminal network, and it systematically co-opted essential parts of the government, PWD, the Transport Board, the Treasury, even specific elements within the police, all to create this functional parallel system for buying and hiding assets.
A shadow system operating with public funds. And that brings us to the fallout, doesn't it? And the really complex question of accountability.
Starting with the prime minister. He claimed he knew absolutely nothing about this whole scheme.
Which, if the chain gang executed their information control strategy as well as it seems they did, maybe it's plausible. They were designed to keep people like him in the dark.
Plausible, perhaps. His reaction, though, was very dramatic, very public.
Extremely. He organized this parade, had 86 of the vehicles driven under police escort back to the vendor, Harney, publicly returned.
Which was clearly a performance, right? Designed to show he was taking swift action, reclaiming control, reassuring the public.
Undoubtedly. But the problem is recovery was only partial. 86 vehicles were paraded back.
But the initial figure was around 200 illegal purchases.
Exactly. So the government itself, according to the sources, is still actively looking for the other 114 vehicles. And they acknowledge that some done sell over, already gone, sold into the private market.
So the systemic failure allowed for permanent, irreversible loss before this even came to light.
That's the reality. The assets are gone.
And what about accountability for the people involved? This is where it gets really murky, doesn't it?
Very. The source material points out something quite revealing, that all the key members of this chain gang are identified as the PM's own boys and girls plus his wife.
Implying a level of closeness, political protection, maybe?
That's certainly the suggestion, an intimacy that perhaps creates a complex political shield around them.
And the source material captures a real sense of cynicism about this.
Oh, palpable cynicism, and notes the bitter irony, basically saying people who allegedly stole $15 million of public money.
Right.
What happens to them? They just get cussed out by husband in public and you laugh in private at the performance.
Wow. So the perception is, for the high-level players, it's just a public scolding, maybe some private laughter later, but no real legal consequences.
That's the perception reflected in the source, yes. Minimal legal jeopardy, just a political slap on the wrist.
But contrast that with how lower-level staff were treated.
Big contrast. The source mentions other officials involved specifically, customs officers, who apparently opened the bond to release the vehicles when they arrived. They were threatened.
Threatened. But the police weren't called about those threats.
Apparently not. So the system seems to show this clear double standard. Threats and intimidation for the staff down the line who facilitated parts of the crime.
But for the alleged principals, the ones directing it, it's a public shouting match and internal political games.
It paints a pretty bleak picture of accountability.
So this deep dive, it really shows just how effectively that information control worked, doesn't it? Hiding the vehicles off the books, that closed payment loop with the Treasury insider.
Combined with the timing, the strategic use of those cabinet creeper decisions.
Yeah, it all created this perfect storm, an ideal environment for this kind of high-level corruption to just flourish undetected for who knows how long.
For a long time, clearly.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway, maybe the structural insight here, is that this story, it's less about the $15 million itself, though that's huge, and more about the systemic vulnerability, how the chain gang could operate by basically weaponizing the boring stuff.
Right, the paperwork, the procedures, private agreements.
Yeah.
Using the tools of bureaucracy to override the checks and balances built into that bureaucracy.
Yeah, weaponizing the mundane.
And remember, despite the PM's very public show of returning some vehicles, 114 are still missing.
Yeah.
Over half of the illegally purchased ones identified, some already sold on. The cost of this systemic failure isn't just theoretical, it's permanent loss.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up.
Okay.
If a criminal network like this can operate so successfully by making sure only, say, two crucial people know the full picture, the person faking the documents, like the PSPWD, and the person pushing the payment through, like the Treasury insider,
The key nodes.
then what are the most critical choke points, the ones we often overlook? What choke points do you need to truly secure any large public financial system against this specific kind of internal organized collusion?
You really have to think about those points where verification maybe gives way to just blind trust, or where a process becomes purely mechanical. Those isolated nodes, those moments of assumed integrity, those are the vulnerabilities this whole sophisticated operation just zeroed in on.
It's a really powerful lesson, isn't it, about making sure financial oversight procedures aren't just there on paper. They need to be robust enough, maybe redundant enough, to withstand being actively weaponized by the very people who are supposed to be running the system.
Absolutely critical.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.